finally we are ready to try powering up this Continental chassis for the first time. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This took quite a bit of work, more work than I'm used to, for a few reasons. The wiring is not in the greatest condition. I had to replace some of it. It may look old, that's because I scavenged it from other sets. I've parted out a few chassis and I saved the wiring, so I reused it here so it all looks like period wiring. We had the issue with the circuit board and the really damaged traces around the two octal tubes. I don't know what the heck somebody was trying to do back in the day, but it really messed up that corner of the board. I had to replace the linearity control. Had to replace one of the wires going to the flyback, and I realized when I was putting in this horizontal output tube that I probably had to cut and do some repair on this because this wire is stretched to the absolute limit. I want to try powering this up, see if it works, and once it does, I will replace that before I give it back to the owner. Put about ½ an inch more length on it. I had to repair the power switch. So I finally figured out that wire nut that was in here. They had cut off the two wires from the power switch and just connected them together with a wire nut. Eventually these switches fail. Push on, push off, and I suspect this will fail again. I opened it up and flushed it out with some deoxit, but I could see that the switch contacts were worn, so I do anticipate this will fail again. The simple solution is to do what they did. Splice these two together and hook it up to a power strip or something that has an external power switch on it, so you can turn this off and on and just hardwire this to always be turned on. I repopulated the tubes. I cleaned all the controls, lubed them up. Remember, this has the additional fourth control being a tone control. I'm going to power this up first with the fusible resistor out. So much work was done to this, I want to just make sure that it can be turned on and the tubes glow. Then I need to dig up a picture tube. So this set had been rewired, has been rewired for a 6.3 volt filament CRT, whereas the original was 2.68. This is the filament wire here. Simply moved it from one terminal over about 4 positions, so it's connected up in parallel with all the other tubes. The Siesta I started restoring a couple years ago also has a 6.3 volt CRT in it, and I have not completely reassembled that set yet, so I'm going to try plugging it into this. It had been rewired for a 17BZP4, whereas this uses a 17, what is it, AVP4? EVP4. Sometimes when you substitute different CRTs, you also have to reverse G1 and G2. That may have been done in my head unit inside the wiring going up to the CRT connector. We'll find out when we power this up. If it's wrong, it's not catastrophic, just the picture tube won't work right. But I want to leave this wired as it was when I got it, so when it gets back to the owner, because I don't know what other, well, I want it to just work when he puts it back, because I don't have the cabinet, I don't have his picture tube, I just have the chassis. So, at any rate, we installed a local distance switch. I rewired up the board and everything like I usually do. And I noticed on the chassis, this is a 10L43A chassis. Yeah, 10L43A. That was the last production run of the 10L43 line. They had tweaked it with a few things. One, really easy way to tell was it has this extra terminal strip here with a resistor and a capacitor on it that goes to this. This provides a vertical blanking pulse to suppress retrace lines on the CRT face. There are other few minor changes, but that's one of the more significant ones. Alright, enough talking. Let's see what this thing can do. Okay, here we go. No B+, but all the tubes are in, and I've hooked up the tuner, so we should have them all light up. Alright, nothing. Let's because the set's turned off. On. Drawing. About 0.6 amps. Yes, everything is lighting up. About the tuner. No, I made this mistake before. It's because there's no ground connection to the tuner. So in this wiring harness, there's B+, there's filament supply, but there's no ground. Although the IF cable is connected, I don't think that's grounded. I think normally it's grounded through something else. And I noticed there was a wire I've never seen before. Although, no, never mind. This is going to 6.3. I don't know what this is. I think there might be a light on the cabinet somewhere, and that's what that goes to. Anyway, we are just going to use an alligator clip to complete the circuits. I assume when this is mounted in the cabinet there's a grounding strap or some metal structure or something that grounds this stuff together. Oh yeah, the tubes are lighting up now. And the pilot lamp is missing, so let's replace that. I've been using these LED bulbs lately. Simply a 6.3 volt AC bayonet button, number 47 would work fine. I like these LEDs, they're a bit brighter and they should last longer. Alright. Okay, so next up, let's do it with B+. I'm not going to plug in the picture tube yet, though. Let's just see if we can get a crackle out of the speaker. Make sure everything's unplugged, disconnected before I go poking my fingers in here. Alright. Should drop a bit more current now. That's curious. It reminds me, I think I might have, yeah, there's one 275 volt wire going from the terminal strip to the circuit board I haven't replaced. But some of the other circuits should be getting power. It's not drawing any more current than it was before, but maybe this fuel resistor I installed is bad. I haven't actually checked this. So, I'll connect the missing wire, and I'll put a meter on B+ for the next time I power it up. Alright, now let's try it with B+ actually connected to the circuitry. Here we go. Much more current being drawn. Pegged over 1.5 amps, now it's at about 3/4. We've got 282 volts on our bus. It's supposed to be 275. It's dropping as the circuits warm up. It's actually down to 260 now. 256. 252. I had my variac down to about 115. I just turned it up a little bit. We're at 260 volts, 261, kind of holding steady. Barely a crackle out of the speaker. Well, if I put my finger on the center wiper of the volume control, we do get a buzz. It's a very good thing. I can kind of hear some crackling, so we would think we have some action maybe going on with the flyback. Alright, I'm going to turn it off. Sometimes not the greatest idea to run a set without the yoke connected. So next up, let's get a picture tube hooked up, but this is good. So aside from my dumb mistakes, all the tubes are lighting up, power supply looks good. Let's check one of the other buses. So that was the 275, it's actually running about 261, but that doesn't concern me too much. It's in the neighborhood of where it should be. This should be 140. Let's check this out. It's about 160, continuing to drop, 152, 150, 150, 149. Alright, so the power supply is in the ballpark. Figure plus minus 20% with this stuff, as it depends on, I don't have the picture tube hooked up and the yoke's going to load things down. But your input line voltage may vary a little bit, and depending on how you have the control set and whatnot, it's just the general ballpark. So everything is looking good. Alright, let me catch you up on what's going on. I have connected up all the B plus various voltages correctly. I also pulled out a 17BZP4 CRT from my Siesta set. That is not the original type, and pins 2 and 3 are reversed on it. However, I checked out the wiring and everything is correct. And I left everything connected as it was, so I suspect this chassis has been modified. Because I know, boy, so I really wish I had the whole set with me. He said it does not have the original picture tube, and it's been replaced with one that runs on a different filament voltage. And it seems like all the compatible 21-inch picture tubes generally, at least, have pins 2 and 3 reversed. So, at least right now it's wired correctly for this particular picture tube. I hope that is the same way as for the owner's set, but it is not the way it's supposed to be according to the service info. Hope that makes sense. And in fact, it even says on the inside of mine that CRT has been wired for this type of picture tube. Anyway, I put a different fusible resistor in, and I have it hooked up to a test pattern generator. So let's see what happens. Oh, we do have a raster. Just this bright shop light directly overhead. I couldn't even see it. Alright. Okay. Let's see. I did pick up a channel knob and a fine-tuning knob. Let's see, I guess it's brightness. We lost our raster. Try going around the dial anyways. So if we get reception, we should hear a tone out of the speaker. Didn't have the RF connection going to the tuner. Okay, we are receiving it. Just don't have anything on the CRT. We're wiggling things a little bit here. So it seemed like we had a raster for a while when it faded out. Let's power the set down for a bit. Now I'm very suspicious of this tuner because it's missing its shield. I found a roasted resistor inside. It was split in half. I had to replace. It was filthy. This this one's been a challenge, and I suspect it will be to get a good picture out of it. This set seems to have seen a lot of hours, and it had been worked on for sure, and who knows, maybe whoever was working on it abandoned it. I don't know why in the world the shield would be off the tuner. Alright, let's turn it back on. Ah, man. We were just starting to get an image, and then it faded. So why would it fade? Could be the high voltage is fading, or it could be the voltages on the CRT are fading. Well, let's try something simple first. I have another tuner from another set that is in better condition. So I am going to swap this one in. Here we go, powering up with a different tuner. Pilot light's burned out in this one too, that's almost always the case. Virtually impossible to replace that pilot light, dial light, without pulling the whole set apart. So they rarely got replaced back in the day. Looking on the CRT. Tuner's doing something now. Oh, didn't hook my signal source up to it. That will help. Oh, the CRT is coming to life. Oh. See, it's possible if the tuner's messed up, it could just be driving the picture to be black. That makes any sense. I'll show you what I mean. Is I'm tuning around, there are flashes of light on the CRT. In other words, it's picking up a signal. In other words, you don't have a signal, the screen would go blank, depending on how the set is designed. Oh, we had something more to go. This is a really strong picture tube too, so it should be nice and bright. Just hold controls. Oh, we almost had it. What is going on with this set? It's almost like a capacitor charges up when there's a signal, or not. Could be an AGC issue. Actually, that makes the most sense. Oh, let me turn it down. Because AGC has a time constant where it samples the incoming signal, will adjust the gain depending on the received signal strength. So if we go from weak to strong, it may go from high gain to low gain, and it takes a little while, and then it fades out. Let's try local distance switch. That doesn't seem to do much of anything. What's maddening though is sometimes the image stays on there a little longer than other times. Also, I can kind of smell a weird burning smell. I can't tell where it's coming from. It could just be one of the power resistors just running warm. Doesn't necessarily mean there's anything bad. Let's see. What is going on with this set? A moment ago I went from, I changed the local distance switch, like there, and the image appears briefly sometimes. And that's, local distance is definitely part of the AGC circuit. What I don't get is this. How come sometimes it works for a while? It kind of blows the AGC theory out. And then I touch something and it goes away. So this also could be a loose connection. I'm not touching anything. Seems like as soon as I go near the horizontal or vertical hole controls, the image disappears. Like it just did. Or maybe that's it. When the image locks, that's when it disappears, or something. I've never seen a set quite act like this before. Oh, that was interesting. I turned the contrast down, and now the set is a lot happier. Better take a picture for posterity. Okay, let's try a local distance switch. See what that does. Okay, it's just gone in one position. It's back in the other. I'm feeding it a very strong signal, by the way. Or no, actually I wasn't. Now I am. Back it off a little. That's about where I normally have it set. Okay, it's there, it's locked. Looks terrible though, because it's all weird and kind of halo-y and fuzzy. If I turn the brightness down, that is not how the brightness control is supposed to act. Makes me wonder again, like maybe I do have G1 and G2 backwards. That's a very freaky effect. It's certainly not really what it should be looking like. Let's try a different pattern just for fun. There's dots. That's supposed to be a crosshatch. Weird burning smell again. Tweak the contrast. And the contrast is also not working like it should be. It controls the gain of the video amp tube, and this just, for part of its rotation, is nothing, and then the image disappears. That's not right. One potentially good thing is generally when there's a lot of stuff that's working strangely, it's due to one source that's affecting a lot of things. It's unlikely there would be like a dozen mistakes. There's just one mistake that would affect a dozen things. So we got to put on a thinking cap of what could be, what could cause all of these symptoms. The brightness control doesn't work right. The contrast control doesn't work right. The AGC isn't working right. Everything's very touchy and twitchy. I did check the power supply voltages, and they look to be okay. I have not double checked all the tubes. That's a possibility, I suppose. Especially if one has an HK short or something like that that can cause weirdness throughout the set. All that aside, this is fairly promising. We have a raster. We know the flyback is working right. We have sound. It's curious though, when we tune for best sound, the image isn't quite right. I just tuned to a different channel where we have sound, but so I can actually get sound on 3 different channels. There's possibly this channel on the tuner's messed up, so let's try something else. Let's go to channel 7. Okay, that is. Huh, little mouse. But it is very bright. And actually, the brightness control, it's definitely having an effect. I triple checked it. G1 and G2 look like they're hooked up right. I checked all the wiring from the base of the CRT all the way into the circuit. But it sure is acting like they're backwards. In other words, if I change the brightness, it gets a little bit brighter, but also it's very out of focus. In case you're not familiar with those terms, G1 is the control grid. Think of a triode. It's your modulating grid. G2 is more, it's like an acceleration anode. And in this set they call G4, that's focus, and then the final one that really accelerates it to the face of the CRT. They don't give a name, but you can think of that as yet another G, I suppose. Sometimes they're labeled A1, A2, A3, but in this case, G1, G2, G3, G4. So if you get them backwards, the brightness, the way they have this set, actually applies they use G1 strictly for retrace blanking. They control brightness by adding a DC offset to the cathode along with the video signal. So that gets a little confusing. But this pin, what they show is pin 3 here. That should be G1, and that just goes right to secondary and the vertical output transformer. So that just gets a pulse every time the electron beam gets to the bottom of the screen, so it blanks it out as it's going back to the top. So that should be a fixed voltage, DC voltage, with a spike to blank it out. For brightness, here's where they add a DC offset to the capacitively coupled video signal, and that is going to the cathode. And that on all these CRTs is the same. 1 and 8 of the filament, and 7 is the cathode. That's a constant. Alright, so what about the other one? Well, that would be 6 on this diagram. It goes down and over to this 100K resistor, and that loops around to a 10 microfarad cap, and that goes to plus 400 volts. That is the boost voltage. So that's just a fixed DC voltage. It's there to help focus and accelerate the electrons towards the face of the CRT. So you can imagine if you get your modulating grid and your accelerating grid backwards, it's going to do very strange things. Alright, enough about that. How can I swap them? I probably just confused the heck out of everybody, including myself, so let's regroup a little bit. I'm using a picture tube that is different than the one that was originally put in this set. And in particular, 2 of the connections on the plug going into the back of the picture tube need to be reversed. I traced things out and it looked like the change had already been made on this set, but maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to try swapping them out. That would be G1 and G2, which correspond to, well, pins 2 and 6 are connected internally on the CRT, so let's just say pin 2, and pin 3 is the other. You need to switch 2 and 3. Alright, so what does that correspond to on this plug? Well, I traced it out, and it's these two. It's the top one and the bottom one. I need to flip those two. So I simply took a soldering iron and heated up the ends of these and pulled the wires out. I just need to switch them around and reheat the tips of the pins there, and then turn the set back on. See what happens. Alright, let's see what that did. Now, I need to point out that this picture tube is also damaged. Somebody left it running for a very long time with the vertical collapse, so it has a permanent line burned into it horizontally. Otherwise it works really well. It's a real shame. It's a very strong picture tube, probably had very few hours on it, but it's permanently destroyed. Well, interesting. We certainly have an image. And let's see, I'm adjusting brightness. It seems to be working a little bit more like I would expect now. Contrast is not, though. I'm going from one extreme to the other, and it's not acting like I would expect. Oh. Oh, I just touched the tuner a little bit. I think I was just really off station. Ah, that's how the brightness control is with this. Yeah, I'm sure I had those backwards before now. Much, much better. And might have the contrast control backwards. I had to rewire the thing. I did my best to get it right, but I think so right now this is maximum contrast and this is minimum, but it's behaving the opposite of how I would expect. Huh. It's actually looking pretty good. So, I mean, linearity's terrible, but yeah, we gotta work on that. But otherwise, alright. Varying the input signal over a huge range, and it's looking pretty good, so I think the AGC might actually be hooked up correctly. Strange that I can't get these other test patterns though. It's just the bars. It's having a real hard time. Alright, well, it's progress. I think before I go too nuts worrying about the image quality and such, I'll make sure all the tubes are good. Well, I mostly got it sorted out. Turned out that one of the 6 DE6IF tubes had severe grid leakage. My Suncor TC162 has a very sensitive grid leakage tester. Also, there are flaky connections, particularly the shield from the tuner going into the IF. Had to wiggle that a bit. This tuner is just generally a mess. So the shield's missing, which is also contributing to some noise, I'm sure. And these connections aren't that great. So I recommended to the owner he get a replacement tuner if he can. Otherwise, fabricate a shield. Shield's this U-shaped metal bit, which is missing from this one. It was also very dirty. I really went over it well and cleaned it. But I'm going to have to tighten up. There's an RCA connector here that feeds the IF signal into the tuner. and it works. The longer I've been letting it play, the better it's getting. So I'm pretty happy with things right now. I still smell a little bit of a burning smell, but I'm starting to think that it might be the tubes. Some of them need to be cleaned, some of them have been cleaned, but sometimes I use glass cleaner. It has a scent to it, and that can linger on the tubes and kind of burn off. So when they're first heated up, they smell a little odd. So basically, I'm just going to let it keep playing for a while and make sure that everything is working well. Well, I have the set working fairly well now. I wish I had a smoking gun I could present to you, but I don't. Incremental improvement as I check things, tweak things. What I can do is tell you what I did. So it's working quite well now. Image is stable. Nice break, good contrast, good sound. Okay, so few things. One, coax connector from the IF to the tuner. I sprayed some deoxit around the collar of this RCA connector, crimped the RCA connector, make sure that made a solid contact. That actually will provide ground return for the filament supply and the B+ circuitry. Earlier I'd used an alligator clip. I really didn't need to. It's just that connection was so bad it wasn't making good contact, so that helped. Two, one of these IF tubes, I believe it was this one, the 6DE6, had really excessive grid leakage. It was almost full-scale deflection into the bad on my TC162. Not all tube testers check grid leakage. They'll check for shorts, they'll check for emission, but you really need a sensitive, or not even a sensitive, you need a tester that has that feature to really weed out troublesome tubes, especially in TV circuits, sensitive circuits, IF circuits. Grid leakage is a bad thing. What is grid leakage? I believe it's cathode material over time gets deposited on the grid, and you get secondary emission from the grid to the plate, and that causes havoc in the circuitry. Alright, what else? I removed the high voltage box because I thought there might be some arcing in here which would cause problems, but that turned out to be fine. But I need to take it off anyways because I do want to replace this wire, use a longer one. I double checked all the tubes, and replacing the 6DR7 helped a little bit. Didn't get rid of the jitters, but it made I got better height and linearity with the replacement tube. Now, earlier when I was going around and I was pushing on this, the image would go crazy. I get really bad ripples, vibrating violently horizontally, a little bit vertically. Doesn't happen anymore. So what did I do? I looked over all the board, looked over all the solder connections, poked and prodded around, and I could not find any specific area. So I figured, well, I'll just put that on the back burner and I'll go through and do some other stuff I usually do, like the horizontal adjustment procedure. There is a horizontal hold control, there's a horizontal frequency control, and there is a horizontal ringing coil. Now, the horizontal frequency is inside of a little metal enclosure there with the height control, and that's mounted directly to the circuit board. I had gone over and cleaned all the potentiometers and the control clusters. I installed a new linearity control, cleaned the width control. I didn't clean those two. I adjusted the height when I first powered up the set, but I never touched the horizontal frequency control. When I did, I believe that's what improved or stabilized the image. What I think was happening is we had a dirty contact, which was causing the horizontal frequency to move, or to drift a little bit high-low, which would result in horizontal ripple on the screen. Now, why would we get vertical issues as well? Well, the vertical is driven by boost voltage. It's filtered by that cap right there. The boost voltage is derived from the horizontal circuitry. So if the horizontal circuitry has issues, it's going to affect the boost voltage. So by the horizontal frequency varying, it's going to cause the boost voltage to vary, which will cause the vertical deflection to vary. I think that is all that's going on with this. So I've had it running for a few hours now with no problems. I have not made all the adjustments like screen centering, horizontal linearity and such, centering, the stuff you have to do with magnets inside the CRT enclosure, simply because this is not the picture tube that goes with this set. I don't have it. That's back with the owner, so he'll have to make those final fine-tuning adjustments when he gets the set back in his possession. I'll walk him through it if he needs some instruction, but basically a flat-bladed screwdriver to adjust the height, linearity, and there's a width control. And only if he needs to would I open up the CRT enclosure and start mucking around with the magnets inside there. You don't always need to. So, I'm going to let the set run a bit longer. I need to replace that wire, reinstall the high voltage enclosure, do a little lead dressing. I'm hoping I can hand this chassis to him this upcoming weekend. If not, I'll have to pack it up and ship it back to him. Don't want to ship it. Who knows what might happen, but if we have to, we will. So I think that is going to be it for this Continental restoration project. I wish I had the cabinet, because Continentals are very cool looking sets, but I just don't, so this will have to do. Next up is going to be Chase's Debutante set. Oh, and don't worry about this horizontal line. There's a burn in that from somebody leaving the set running with the vertical collapse. There's nothing I can do about it, but that is not a defect in the chassis. It's just the picture tube. So, thanks for watching. Next up, Chase's Debutante, which has some interesting challenges as well. Thanks for watching.
I guess that's the end of this batch of burglaries.